Is it possible to cruise to the Southern Caribbean without wasting a bunch of time on a floating amusement park, only to immediately turn around once you get there because you have no time? Are those ultimate beaches, the best reefs, and the most interesting culture even doable? Well, let's find out if there are any itineraries where we can say, this is the cruise. Hey everyone, I'm Clint, and welcome to This is the Cruise, where we look at upcoming cruise itineraries and try to figure out if this is the cruise for you. Today we're looking at Southern Caribbean cruises, and there is a lot to consider. So, quick like and subscribe, and let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we have to talk about is really what is a Southern Caribbean cruise. There is the Windward Antilles Islands and the Leeward Antilles Islands. The Leeward Antilles Islands make up the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao. And you kind of move east and you get into Trinidad and Tobago, and then you kind of come up as you head north and you hit all those islands up there in the Windward Antilles until you get, through the Virgin Islands and back over to Puerto Rico. Those are really kind of the Southern Caribbean islands. However, cruise lines tend to, as they are wont to do, tend to expand those out and often will include islands or stops in South America or Central America. So we're going to be kind of looking at some of these itineraries, but we're going to limit the scope to Puerto Rico, south along the Windward Antilles Islands, back over through Trinidad and Tobago to the ABC Islands or the Leeward Antilles Islands. We really need to consider that it's difficult to do a 7-day Southern Caribbean cruise leaving from Florida. It's possible to do a 7-day from San Juan. In fact, I've got some great itineraries to show you. But really, if you're going to leave from Florida, you need to plan for 10 days because it takes time to get down that far south. But definitely be careful because there are many itineraries that are focused on staying on the ship. And I call those gotcha itineraries. Royal Caribbean and Carnival Cruise Lines have some 8-day cruise itineraries leaving from Florida, where you're going to get on their resort ship, say an Oasis of the Seas or a Mardi Gras on Carnival. And then you're going to spend 8 days roughly with little over 5,000 people on your way down to Aruba. Then you're going to spend some time, a day there. Then you're going to go over to Curacao. And then you're going to get back on the ship and you're going to spend more days floating at sea. They're going to take you to Coco Cay or Half Moon Cay, which is Carnival's private island, and then you're going to come home. So really, 8 days, 3 stops. I just throw those itineraries away. I'm not interested in that. I'm not saying those are bad cruises, particularly if you want to be on a ship like that. They have a lot of fun, a lot of activities. It's like going to an all-inclusive. It's like going to a quasi all-inclusive resort, and you get to have a lot of fun, for sure. But when it comes to quality itineraries, it's not really there. So just watch out for those if you're looking for something that has a little bit better itinerary experience. We have 2 questions that we need to answer. We have, how long do you have? 7 days, 10 days, maybe even 14 days. And then really, what part of the Southern Caribbean do you want to see? Do you want to see those Windward Antilles Islands, which would be really the Virgin Islands and kind of down the eastern side of the Southern Caribbean? Or do you want to focus more on the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, the Leeward Antilles? The other thing that I want to quickly touch on here is, if you watched my video on how I rate cruises, one of the key factors is variety. I want to see as much of the world as possible. And the Southern Caribbean is one of my favorite places to cruise to. I can go back and go back and go back. But for variety, A St. Thomas and a St. Lucia are very similar. They're different countries, but they are very similar. So you're going to see that the variety and repeatability might appear to be a little lower, but you won't run out of things to do in the Southern Caribbean. So don't let that deter you as we look at the scores. We're just trying to take an honest look. And the first one that I want to bring up here is a 7-night on Royal Caribbean Rhapsody of the Seas. It leaves from San Juan, a great port to start and end. You're going to go to St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, Barbados. Then you're only going to spend 1 day cruising. 1 day cruising for a 7-day cruise. That's an incredible itinerary. I love it. So for this cruise, a variety score of 3, a repeatability score of 3.3, for a total of 6.3. For an active lifestyle, giving it a score of 3.3, enrichment 2.8, and relaxation 2.6. Well done, Royal Caribbean, on that itinerary. They're not the only ones, though. If you want to be on a little bit nicer ship, Celebrity has the Celebrity Summit. Similar itinerary in that there's only 1 day cruising, but this one starts in San Juan, goes to St. Martin, Antigua, St. Lucia, Barbados, Dominica, not to be confused with the Dominican Republic, goes to the island of Dominica, then cruises, and then you're back to San Juan. So again, 1 day of cruising. Excellent itinerary. A little bit more variety, though, because there's some much more distinction between, say, Barbados and St. Martin and St. Lucia. We give this one a variety score of 3.5, repeatability of 2.6, total score of 6.1, active score of 3.2, enrichment is 2.6, and relaxation is 2.5. I really like this itinerary. Got some really good options here. And looking at it, 2 places I've personally never been. So, that would be on my personal list because I do like to try new places. I don't want to leave out Disney. Disney does have some great itineraries out there. And while my kids have outgrown Disney, particularly outgrown the Disney Cruise Line, you could always consider Disney has a similar itinerary on the Disney Magic. You leave from San Juan, again, go to St. Kitts, Antigua, Dominica, then to St. Lucia, Barbados, and then you're cruising back to San Juan. This one I give a variety score of 3.5, repeatability 2.8, for a total of 6.1. If you're an active person, a 3.2 is not too bad. An enrichment of 2.8. Honestly, I would like to see that a little higher. If I'm going to be bringing my kids, I want them to experience a little bit more culture than what this one offers. And a relaxation score of 2.3. Okay, so those are the 3 7 days for Southern Caribbean that I picked out. You'll notice I didn't do any ABC islands. And can you do ABC on a 7-day? Yes, you can, but you're going to start in Aruba. So you got to fly down to Aruba, which is fine. And then you're going to go over probably and hit a little bit in Central America, or you're going to go up to, a dash of Eastern Caribbean as well in there. Those tend to leave out Bonaire, which is unfortunate because that was my personal favorite of those 3 islands. Their itineraries aren't bad, but you sort of feel like you're missing something. So I like starting in Puerto Rico for those 7 days. So in the 10-day category, I think the itineraries that we're looking at that are worth doing are only in the premium category. Holland America and Princess really are the ones that are bringing it. So we're going to start with a 10-day Southern Caribbean Seafarer from Holland America on their Eurodam or the Zoeterdam. These are going to be about $1,000 per person, 10 days. That's not too bad. Leave from Fort Lauderdale. We're going to go to Half Moon Key right off the bat, which is not part of the Southern Caribbean. That's actually in the Bahamas. That's okay. I figure, okay, we're starting our vacation. We just want to get it going. I'm not on the ship for very long before I'm immediately on a great beach. I can relax. I can kick it off without an overwhelming experience right away. Then we're going to move on to Grand Turk. There's a lot of activities we could do there. Swimming with stingrays is a great one. Moving on to Amber Cove. Again, some great activities there, but we still haven't yet gotten to the Southern Caribbean. Then we're going to actually spend a day at sea getting us all the way down. So you can see we kind of kicked it off with some activity right away to start the vacation. I like that. Then we're going to have a day at sea to get us down to the ABC Islands, where we're going to start in Bonaire. I highly recommend going out to Klein Bonaire, then go to Curacao, where we can spend the day walking around the city and exploring kind of this old world Dutch. It's beautiful. And then we're going to go on to Aruba, where really the world is your oyster. If you want to get in the ocean, you can. If you want to go scuba diving, you can. If you want to relax on the beach, you can. If you want to go hiking and explore the wilderness of Aruba, you can. I mean, it's a great itinerary. For this one, a variety of 3.5, repeatability of 2.6, and a relaxation score of 3.3. Moving on to Princess. Princess has a really nice 10-day cruise. It doesn't go down to the ABC Islands, but you do have a really nice itinerary where you kick it off at Princess Cay right away. Then you're going to cruise to St. Thomas. St. Thomas has tons and tons of stuff to do. It's one of those islands that we can just never get enough of. Then you're going to move on to Dominica, St. Lucia, where I would recommend going horseback riding on the beach. From there, go to Martinique. Martinique, one of my favorite islands. It has a special place in my heart. Had family that's lived there for a little while, but also it was the first cruise stop that I ever went on. Our cruise left out of Puerto Rico and it stopped first in Martinique. I was a teenager and I got hooked on cruising. From there, you're going to go to Antigua, then you're going to cruise, make your way back home, 2 days at sea, cruising, which is okay. It gives you a chance to spend some time on the ship, relax, and then you can also spend time kind of focusing on getting ready to get back to work or back into life, as it were. For variety, I give this one a 3.3. Repeatability 2.8 for a total of 6.1. If you're an active person, a 3.1. Enrichment 2.3, and a relaxation score of 2.6. Pretty well-rounded itinerary here with this one. Okay, so I want to juxtapose that cruise against another cruise, which is similar, but slightly different. Princess Cruises is owned by Carnival, and so is Holland America. That Princess cruise was a 10-day cruise. Holland America has an 11-day cruise. The previous 10-day Holland America cruise that we talked about was their Southern Caribbean Seafarer cruise. This one is an 11-day Southern Caribbean Wayfarer cruise. I don't know how they come up with their names, but I do appreciate Holland actually naming their cruises and their itineraries. This one leaves from Fort Lauderdale and you spend 2 days cruising right off the bat. So it's a little bit different feel, right? We're going to relax on the ship. We'll relax on the ship some more. We're going to end up in St. Martin, go to Antigua, go to St. Lucia, go to Dominica, go to St. Kitts, go to St. Thomas. Then we're going to cruise for a day, end up at Half Moon Cay, where we can spend the day relaxing and doing some exploring around there. If we want to have that last minute, get in the ocean, cap off the cruise, it's a great stop for that. And then the next morning we wake up back in Fort Lauderdale. So we're not going to be going to Martinique, but we are going to be going to St. Martin and St. Kitts. So we don't add an extra sea day. We actually add an extra stop, which I like. You know, if you're wanting to cruise right away, or if you're wanting to relax right away, you sort of have a choice there. These two itineraries have very similar feels, right? They're exploring the same part of the Caribbean. So the Southern Caribbean Wayfarer from Holland on the Eurodam, I give a 3.8 for variety, a 2.7 for repeatability, with a total score of 6.5. If you're an active person, 3.1, 2.3 for enrichment, and a relaxation score of 3. Again, a really nice variety there, but kind of focused on one part of the Caribbean. 2 weeks means you can see quite a bit of the Caribbean. You know, if you start from Florida or within the Caribbean, interestingly, you can do a Southern Caribbean cruise from New York, Boston, Baltimore, but you're just going to be spending tons of time on the ship, get down to the Southern Caribbean, spend a few days, maybe a few more days, like 4 or 5 days, and then come on back. So you're not going to get as much out of it. There are 2 types of 14-day Southern Caribbean cruises. There's the highlights, and then there's the immersion 14-day cruise. And I've got one itinerary of each for you. If your bucket list cruise is to see the Caribbean, and this is your one shot, whether you're from outside the United States or from within the United States, you have 14 days, you've always wanted to do the Caribbean, and you just want to get as much as possible out of it, then the Holland America Zaandam 14-day out of Fort Lauderdale is the cruise for you. We're going to start out in Fort Lauderdale, and we're going to hit the Eastern Caribbean by going to the Bahamas and Half Moon Cay. Then we're going to go to Grand Turk and Amber Cove in the Dominican Republic. And then we're going to go down to San Juan, where we pivot to the Southern Caribbean. spend a day in San Juan, spend a day in St. Thomas, and then we're going to cruise deeper south to the deep southern Caribbean and see the ABC Islands. We're going to start in Bonaire, then we're going to go to Curacao. Very different types of experiences between the two. Then we're going to move over to Aruba, where we can spend the day on the beach, spend the day in the ocean, spend the day exploring the landscape. Really, it's up to you. Then we're going to cruise for the day, go on to the Western Caribbean, where we go to Grand Cayman. We're going to cycle around Cuba up to Key West, where we're then going to end up back in Fort Lauderdale. An awesome itinerary with a variety score of 4, a repeatability score of 3, for a total of 7. If you're an active person, 3.5, an enriching score of 2.5, and a relaxation score of 3.1. Probably the most balanced of all of them. And the one that my wife said, that's the cruise for me. If you want something that's a little bit more immersive, a little bit more focused on just immersing yourself in the Southern Caribbean, Holland America does have a 14-day on the Volendam. It leaves from Fort Lauderdale. You're going to cruise for 2 days because you got to get to the Southern Caribbean. Then you're going to spend a day in St. Thomas, a day in St. Kitts, then move on to St. Lucia, go on to Barbados, Grenada, Guadalupe, St. Martin, San Juan, cruise for a couple days to get back up. But before they just drop you off, you're going to spend a day at Half Moon Cay, where you can relax and kind of get that final beach day in before the next day going on to Fort Lauderdale and returning home. This one gets a variety score of 3, a repeatability score of 2.8, for a total of 5.8. If you're an active person, a 2.9, enrichment score of 2.75, and a relaxation of 3. The downside to this itinerary is it doesn't get down to the ABC Islands, and I think that's what threw my wife off. If it went down that far, she would have been all about it. For me, I have not been to 3 of these places. So this is the one that I would book if I were booking a 14-day Caribbean cruise. If you want to go longer, you can always go back to back, of course. Holland is really good at this. Princess does this sometimes. Even Royal Caribbean will do this. Those are the 3 lines I see doing this on the regular, where I would also say Celebrity does this too, where they may spend this 14-day goes, to the Southern Caribbean, and then they're going to do a 7-day Eastern Caribbean cruise immediately after. They're not going to turn down your money. Book 2 back-to-back cruises. You can stay in the same room. All right. So this is the cruise, right? Any one of these cruises could work for you. The Virgin Islands are spectacular. They can feel similar to each other, though. St. Lucia and St. Thomas are very, very similar. But you never run out of, it seems like you never run out of things to do. St. Thomas is a perennial favorite of my family's. If it's on our itinerary, it doesn't bother us at all. We know we're going to have a great time. St. Lucia might be the most beautiful island in the Caribbean. We love it. St. Croix is another one of my favorites. It wasn't on any of these itineraries, which is unfortunate because it has this down-to-earth vibe and the diversity of landscape, with one half of the island being a desert, the other half of the island being a rainforest, is really endearing. We've also fallen in love with ABC Islands, Bonaire being a favorite of my family's. Okay, so have you been to the Southern Caribbean? If so, let me know in the comments below. I want to know, what was your favorite island? Where would you want to go? And did I miss any itineraries? Is there something where you're like, look, we did this itinerary, we did it on Oasis of the Seas, and we left from here and we had an incredible time. Tell me about it. I'd love to hear it. If I'm wrong, let me know. Let me know. I'm not shy. So, because of all of these factors, putting all of this together, if I were to book a Caribbean cruise today, if I had 7 days, I would book on that Royal Caribbean Rhapsody of the Seas that hits the best parts of the Virgin Islands. But the Holland America 14-day on the Zaandam gives you a complete picture of the Caribbean in one cruise. And really, variety is the spice of life, right? Especially here at This Is the Cruise. Thanks for watching.